Hi, Dr. Tara.
Hi, Dr. Ginger.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm so happy to be here with you and chatting again. I mean,
I
we chat all
know.
the time, right? But
Yeah, but
talking
recording
about
it.
medicine
Yeah,
together and sharing it with the world.
yeah, totally. So we're going to just jump right in and get into a complex topic that we both treat pretty often because it intersects with a lot of the diagnoses that we see and a lot of the health conditions that we often hear about from our patients. I'm going to let you take the lead on a lot of the info since you are like fast become an expert in this area of hair loss.
Yeah.
Um, and, in many natural medicine circles, we always hear about addressing root causes. So I just think it would be great if we could quickly cover the basics of the major root causes of hair loss, and then, of course, what we like to do to address them. So,
Absolutely. I think
yeah.
really the most commonly known cause would be an imbalance in hormones. And that can include sex, stress, or even hormones, including like insulin, if you consider that. Also, just natural processes of aging would be considered a root cause, although aging isn't a definitive, guarantee that you have to lose your hair. That can absolutely be combated with some of the longevity factors that, people seek. Of course, metabolism, the way that you're dealing with sugars and nutrients in your body.
Yeah, and
Um,
just to clarify, you said sex and you didn't say sex hormones. So just so everybody knows, like when she said hormone imbalances and then sex hormones, what blood sugar,
Stress
regulating
hormones as
hormones,
well.
and
Yeah.
stress hormone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are
So
lots and lots of hormones, not
yeah.
just estrogen and progesterone, which are the two major sex hormones for women.
Sure.
Yeah.
And testosterone, which also, is the main contributor, in my opinion, to the hair loss issue. So stress and stress factors, external and internal. So when we say stress, I'm not just talking about, you had a stressful day, but I'm also talking about COVID, getting the flu, having a
Right.
surgery, physical and emotional stressors, nutrient
Childbirth.
for sure, which is
Yeah.
a complex hair loss situation, hormonal
Yeah.
and stressful. Nutrition is a huge thing because in order to grow hair and maintain healthy hair follicles, you need the building blocks of hair and you need the nutritive support for those cells. And then there's also lifestyle factors. There are ways that we can affect our hair through exposure in our polluted cities or jobs, hobbies, things that
Right,
contribute to hair
expose us.
loss.
Yeah. So let's go back to the first thing you said and get into that a little bit more because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that have sex hormone imbalances, estrogen, progesterone, and you said testosterone. So, what
Absolutely.
kinds of conditions are associated with testosterone imbalances?
So PCOS is the first thing that comes to mind for people with a uterus. People without you, like people born male, often have testosterone issues later in life. And actually, it's interesting because hair loss is actually caused by usually more testosterone, not less.
Right.
Um, so as we age, those hormone profiles change for all of us. And the testosterone is broken down in a very specific way into a specific form called DHT, which is largely known to contribute to that male pattern of hair loss, that crown, and then, the receding temple, like the
Yeah, and I
widow's peak.
always I always remember a fellow naturopathic doctor that we both know who shall remain nameless, sort of bragging about his male pattern baldness because it means that
High
his
testosterone.
virility was
Yeah.
so
Yeah, those bald, it's not about the silver fox, it's about the bald, batty older man.
yeah.
Um, But I'll also say, in addition to thinking about, sex hormones that we make and how our cyclical changes throughout the month for women or throughout our lifetime, those ups and downs definitely affect our hair, but also synthetic hormones really affect our hair too. So people that are using oral birth control pills or people that are using hormone replacement therapies often experience hair loss as a result. And it's kind of interesting because at times I think that the hair loss is related to the actual hormone levels and the way that they kind of interact with testosterone and the hair follicle. But there's the other side of it, which is that using those synthetic hormones also deplete nutrients that are important for hair regrowth through the need of those nutrients to metabolize those hormones. So what I mean is when you take synthetic hormones, your body has to filter them out and metabolize and eliminate the waste from those hormones. And that requires things like B vitamins, which are essential for hair regrowth. So,
Yeah, so just so people are clear too, uh, when you're saying synthetic hormones, those are the hormones that are most commonly found in birth control pills and or oral contraceptives. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so menopause hormone replacement is moving in a direction that's, I think, a little better in terms of loss of nutrients and potential hair growth problems.
Although I'll
Mostly
tell you
because
what,
the bioidentical estrogens are being used more frequently now than the Premarins and the synthetic
yeah,
progestins.
yeah, although I'll say this, even my patients that are on bioidentical hormones, they tend to see hair loss. And I've studied this, and I think a lot of it has to do with the right dosage or even a large fluctuation. Because
Mhm.
similarly, postpartum, when we get huge dips in our hormones, when we have a low drop in menopause and then we get back up with HRT, just these fluctuations can often cause shedding events because they change the balance at the
Right.
hair follicle level. So it's like a lot of people will get on HRT because they want to feel better or bioidentical hormone replacement therapies because they want to feel better and they do experience like a shedding event.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and it often gets better, but not without nutritive support. That's where nutrients and balancing, really taking care of the scalp is important too. And I think there's a component there that I personally think I clinically and according to my research, we don't fully understand. But because hormones are such a tight interwoven network, it's really about getting the right dosage, the right marriage of all three, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. And I will say that most significant hair loss when you use hormone replacement therapy is when people are using testosterone, and that's obviously because the testosterone is converted into DHT, which is responsible for miniaturizing or shrinking the hair follicle.
Mm.
There are herbs that are known to block DHT, saw palmetto being like the most famous of them, but all,
Mhm.
in my opinion, not the most powerful.
Mhm.
Um, there are others that have research as well.
Mhm.
But
So
I just
So
go
it's
ahead.
like the typical thing that we discuss all the time, right? Is that if you're going to use certain interventions, which are necessary for a lot of women, especially, between oral contraception and hormone replacement, like lots, millions and millions. So if you have all the naturopathic foundational nutritional support and your microbiome is in good shape, because I always think about the metabolites of some of these, especially the synthetic hormones, which can
Yeah.
really wreak havoc on the gut, or if you have gut imbalances, you're not eliminating the metabolites, and that can certainly create more problems with hair loss and a host of other side effects with hormones.
Well, and this is where personalization becomes so important. Like simple tests like the GI maps test, that's what I use. I think you use others.
I use
Measuring,
GI effects more frequently, but yeah, I'm
yeah,
familiar with the
well,
GI map too.
there are certain bugs that can actually recycle hormones and release them back into your system through that process called glucuronidation. And we
Hmm.
can measure the level of that enzyme in your gut, beta glucuronidase,
Hmm.
which can actually help us predict how much of that hormone replacement or oral birth control or even your natural hormones will be reabsorbed and how to kind of shift that microbial pattern away to make sure that you're excreting the metabolic byproducts that
Absolutely.
we want you to get rid of. So liver
Yeah.
support, digestive support, super important, both nutritively in the microbiome and just when you're thinking about macros, like getting enough fiber
Right.
roughage, moving things out, hydration. So
You mentioned
hormones,
about protein too, and I'm sure, protein in the last year or so has become such a hot nutritional
protein
recommendation.
is like
Yeah.
our personality, collective personality of 2025, right? It's so
Yeah.
gross. I'm like, I don't want protein water. I don't want protein everything. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Our poor kidneys. But no, I do counsel people all the time about protein and how our bodies break down protein into amino acids, and amino acids are the building blocks for hair strands, and for really most processes in our body. So and our body will always prioritize, right? We have to have our daily living functions. Hair is really not essential. It's kind of
Mhm.
excreted as an afterthought, if you will. So hair, when you are
Interesting.
when
Yeah.
you are deficient, your hair is going to be the first thing to go. And sometimes the hair doesn't necessarily fall out, but or if it does, you'll get regrowth, but the regrowth will be very fine. So if you're
Mm,
somebody who had like a thicker strand your whole life, and as you age, you start to notice that your hair is getting finer, you want to think about your protein intake, and you also want to think about the health of your gut and your ability to absorb, because as we age, our absorption goes down naturally. Our ability to absorb goes down as those microvilli in our gut smooth out. So it's harder to absorb nutrients. We have to be more conscious of nutrient dense foods and protein. A really basic protein goal that I would be willing to share with people is if you took half of your body weight and divided it in half, that's a pretty good start point
mhm.
for protein negotiations, if you will.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it can alter depending on activity level and kidney function and things like that. But there are many times that I've given people all the right nutraceuticals, herbs, and really the key was them shifting their diet. And to that point, the new other fad, which is the GLPs,
Yeah, I
those
was just going to bring that up too. So many people are on GLPs, and that really changes dietary patterns for people. So what are you saying about that for
so
folks?
there are clear associations between hair loss and the use of semaglutides and those GLP agonists.
Hmm.
Um, some more than others. Some medications have more incidence of hair loss than others, which we don't have to get into specifics, but the point being is that the mechanism that drives that isn't fully understood.
Hmm.
The theory is that because everyone talks about how GLPs reduce the food noise and they're not always thinking about food and it suppresses the appetite, you eat less.
Hmm.
So the theory is that it's simple malnutrition that's causing the hair loss. You're just
Hmm.
not getting enough protein. You're just getting way less protein and way less nutrients than you typically were. Which is why some people I think there's a link between the more rapidly you lose the weight, the more likely you are to lose the hair. Um,
Right, back
but
to what you said earlier about just the rapid changes. Um, And also, the GLPs can rapidly change your blood sugar metabolism. So, obviously, the insulin hormones and all of
yep,
the blood sugar regulating hormones, leptin, and all the other things that are being
absolutely.
affected. And then compounded, if you're not eating as much, your blood sugar can, be more uh, unstable for
Fluctuated.
that,
Yep,
especially at the initial
yep.
points. Yeah,
Yep.
of
And I
taking
mean,
these
to
medications.
your point, anything that asks your body to adapt is considered a stressor, right?
Right.
Even if it's positive, we talk about that all the time. Like losing the weight might make you feel great, but your body is a huge adaptation to undergo. And to add to it, when you lose a lot of body fat, what do? You release a bunch of toxins,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
those adipocytes or those fat cells store toxins. As we burn through them, we release them, and our body's got a lot of work to do,
Yeah. I
a
give
lot of
people
filtering to do.
complex homeopathics to help that process along to
Drainage.
eliminate, yeah, from the fatty tissue in particular. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I do the same. I do a lot of drainage, lymph drainage, and I also just really, really, really focus on the liver. Just
Yeah.
making sure the liver is nourished so that all of those little pathways are supported with their proper nutrients, and making sure the bowels are moving, making sure that what you are filtering out to wait through the liver to be excreted through the bowels is actually exiting your system and not
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
reabsorbed.
So all those nutrients, the amino acids, the micronutrients, can you say a little bit more? Are there specific micronutrients that are important for hair growth as well?
Yeah, definitely. I would say many of the minerals are important for hair follicle health. I always recommend people take B complex. A lot of people go for B12 because they read something that B12 is important, but I like them in complex. And I'd say, there are also nutrients that I would consider antioxidants, which are important too. Antioxidants are just substances that stop the oxidation of cells. So the oxidation of cells is the damage of cells. And if we have damage to our cells, we could potentially have damage to the hair follicles, which
Right.
are cells. So things like vitamin C can help, vitamin E can help. But I really think the more so minerals and B vitamins would be on the top of my list. And
Mm-hmm.
I would also say super, super important is iron. Iron deficiency, even subclinical, like even if it hasn't presented as full-blown anemia, iron deficiency without anemia or iron deficient anemia are closely linked with hair loss. And people will do all this work and never realize that that's really the culprit. So that's a really, really important one too. And the reason I really want to highlight that is because if you were to go and buy over-the-counter hair growth nutraceuticals, like some of the popular brands, I'm not going to name any of them, but when you look at their ingredients, many of them don't include iron and they don't include a B complex either. And I think it's because, I mean, I'm only guessing, but I think it's because you don't really want to over supplement with iron if you don't need it because it can be
Yeah.
harmful. And
Yeah.
you don't want to include B vitamins for everyone because they can make you nauseated, and some people don't respond well to them due to genetic mutations, et cetera, et cetera. So you might be taking like a hair growth nutraceutical and missing those nutrients still, and it ties back to ingestion. Are you getting those nutrients through your foods and absorption? Or even if you are getting them through your food, are you adequately absorbing them and using them in your system?
Great. So we're coming up on 20 minutes of talking about this, and I want to keep things short and sweet. I know that you also are a wealth of knowledge and information about topical treatments and
Sure, of
about things we can talk about. So I think we should do a part two of this because it is such a big topic, like all of our complex chronic
course.
conditions. And is there anything that I mean, I think just to recap, it's great, like thinking about the two major root causes are hormone imbalances and or times of great hormonal flux.
Hmm.
And nutrition and nutritional imbalances or deficiencies, both in the macros, things like proteins and amino acids, and then micronutrients, like you mentioned, microminerals and particularly iron. I would also throw in there, I use an electrolyte and micromineral supplement all the
Hmm.
time for
Hmm.
hair regrowth, and it's
Yep.
wonderful. And part of that is simply even just stabilizing the cell membrane so that you're keeping the nutrients inside the cell where you want them to be and eliminating some of the, um,
Sure.
some of the things that we use as, cofactors to further the cellular metabolism. And like you keep saying, which is great, like hair growth is like we think about it from a cellular level. And of
Yeah.
course, hormones and nutrients are two things that radically affect
Yeah. Well,
cellular
and I
health.
think there's also one hormone that before we end, I don't want to go
Yeah,
without mentioning, which
yeah,
which is the thyroid hormone. I mean, surely if you are
of
deficient
course.
in your thyroid, a number one sign of hypothyroidism is hair loss. So, as we're talking about kind of some of these more complex, nuanced things that may be contributing to hair loss, before you go down those roads, you probably want to go for the lowest hanging fruit. Test your iron, test your thyroid, because those are very well known to cause hair loss. It's usually a number one sign. And even when people are stabilized on their thyroid hormones, like I have a lot of people that say, "Oh, I've been on the same thyroid hormone dosage for years." As your other hormones fluctuate, your
Right, exactly.
thyroid
When you
hormone
enter
fluctuates.
perimenopause or, yeah,
Stress,
yeah,
perimenopause,
yeah,
pregnancy. even
Yeah.
if your number stays stable and your
Yeah.
dosage of your meds stays stable, things
Yep.
go up and down and the hair loss can occur. So yeah, I think that just thinking about hair from inside out helps. And we can certainly do another portion where we talk about outside in, because there's a lot of information about the scalp health that contributes to how well you're able to regrow hair in terms of texture and
And I want to
density.
talk too in part two, just as a little preview, that there's another way that your hair can be lost, and that is breakage. And that often relates to fungal issues. And so
For
I definitely want to talk
sure.
about yeast overgrowth, other fungal issues, and hair loss in that from that respect as well.
Love that. Awesome. I'm glad we
Okay,
chopped
cool.
this up.
Yeah, me too. And it's great to be back in conversation. And, please, if you have questions or comments, there will be opportunity to ask those underneath this video on both of our YouTube channels. So thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, have a good day.